This is the first video notes that you guys will be taking. Make sure that you go through all of these. Most of the underlined words are the important terminology as you go through these presentations. I'm going to talk about two things today. What is an ecosystem? And I'm going to talk a little bit about food webs. So this first slide outlines a couple of the key terms. You can see community here, ecosystem, biotic, abiotic, habitat, and biodiversity. Communities are groups of species that live in the same habitat. They interact with each other. So a community might involve fish with turtles, with the seaweed, any plants in a water ecosystem. And so all those interact with each other somehow. An ecosystem describes organisms and their abiotic factors. So that leads into two parts here at the bottom, biotic and abiotic factors. Biotic being things that are living, once living are parts. So this is stuff like animals or plants. Whereas abiotic factors are physical or non-living parts. So this is maybe stuff like weather or rocks, soil, things like that that do not qualify under the living characteristics we talked about earlier. Sometimes I'll use the term habitat. That's a place where an organism lives, a specific place. And biodiversity is a variety of organisms in a given area. So the more biodiverse an area is, like the rainforest is very biodiverse. Rainforest is very biodiverse, and it has a lot of different species of organisms. Here's the level of organization, and you should have this drawn somewhere in your notes as well. We start with organism at the bottom. So if you take a fish, and then you have a school of fish, we call it a population. So let's say there's one organism in a population. There might be 5 fish. Now if you take a fish with the duck, with the turtle, you put those into a community because they all interact with each other. And then if you take those parts and add in, if we add up here to make an ecosystem, we take in the abiotic factors or the non-living. So that's the stuff like the weather and the soil. And then if we take a whole bunch of ecosystems together, we get a biosphere. So if you take like the lake ecosystem and the desert and the tundra, you put all those together, we have our biosphere, which is the Earth. And so what exactly is an ecosystem? One part that goes along with this is what we call succession. Succession occurs generally after a major event like a fire or glaciers sometimes cause this also, which you'll see. And what happens then, that area gets decimated of life, and we have a new pioneer species that comes in. And that's the first organism that appears in a new habitat, a newly made habitat. And then eventually, the ecosystem responds so that it's restored to equilibrium, where you have plants, you have trees, you have animals that balance each other out. So what that looks like here, this is a harder one to see, but as glaciers run through, you can see left here behind is basically nothing, but you can see small plants start to come back first, and then eventually larger plants come in at the end. Here's another pictorial view of a fire. So this is before the fire here. And then we have the fire in stage 2 and stage 3. Stage 4, there's pretty much no life. So no life here. But then we start getting small, you can see there's small plants here. Those eventually grow up a little bit bigger. And eventually you have bigger trees that inhabit the area, and it's back to equilibrium. And you can see a similar thing as time goes along on the bottom axis. We get larger and larger plant organisms that come in. So I'm going to skip that slide. You don't have to take notes on that one. Energy flow and ecosystems. This is part 2. This is talking about a food web. There's 3 key parts here. There's producer, consumer, and decomposer. These 3 all fit into trophic levels. So a trophic level is a step away from the sun's energy in a food chain or food pyramid. So for example, this is the sun here. This would be trophic level 1, trophic level 2, trophic level 3. Similarly, here on the bottom, this is a oceanic one. You have the sun here, and you have algae. This is in trophic level 1, trophic level 2, 3, 4. Killer whale would be in 5. Now, producers are the ones that can be in trophic level 1, because those are generally plants. Algae can be a producer as well. Consumers are generally beyond level 1. So for example, this caterpillar here is a consumer. The bird is a consumer. Most of these are all consumers here as well. They eat the organisms that are the producers. Decomposers are the last one in the food chain. So basically we could put something out here that once the bird dies, it gets broken down. Broken down by decomposers. And so they're the last one in the food chain that kind of wraps things up for the food web. And so here's a couple examples you can take a look at. We'll do a lot of work with these in class. That's the end of the lecture. Make sure you go on and take the quiz that is on the website that I will email to you. And then that's all you have for homework.